listening to the Under the Mister Skin podcast, America's fleshiest and skinniest podcasts. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm submerged in alien goo because I tried to get some fucking space pussy.
I'm Ben Sheets, and I hate cake.
Things are much better down where it's wetter. Take it from me, Cleveland Mosier. How's it
Under
going,
the
bro?
skin.
Under the skin.
Under the skin.
That was playing in my head the whole movie.
Things are much better down where it's wetter. Under the skin. Well, the boys are back in town. The boys are. We're discussing my pick tonight, which is under the skin. In case you didn't guess it from all of the jokes and from the title of this episode, the 2013 film by Jonathan Glazer. Jonathan Glazer, for a little bit of background as a filmmaker, not made very many feature-length films. He's primarily been a music video and commercial director. I think he really got big doing a lot of he's from the UK, so he's done a lot of big UK artists. He's done a bunch of Radiohead music videos. I think that's sort of what made him notable in the industry.
Most importantly, he did Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity music video.
Virtual Insanity music video. Yes, he did do that. Yeah, other than that, he has made 4 feature-length films in the last 25 years. He did a film called Sexy Beast. It was his debut in 2000s, like a gangster film. I haven't seen it.
I love that movie. It's by far my favorite Glazer movie.
Okay, yeah, I still need to see it. His second film is a film with Nicole Kidman called Birth, which I also haven't seen, but I've seen the trailer. The premise is basically Nicole Kidman becomes convinced that an 8-year-old boy is her dead husband reincarnated.
I don't like that movie.
You don't like that one? Okay.
It's my least favorite Glazer. So full gamut.
So yeah, from best to worst, and then after that he did Under the Skin in 2013, and then last year in 2024, The Zone of Interest, which won. What Oscar did that win again? Is it best screenplay, best adapted screenplay, something like that? I can't remember.
Best director, maybe.
I don't think it was best director. I don't know. I don't watch the Oscars. All I know is I did watch his acceptance speech, in which he made a explicitly and staunchly pro-Palestine statement, which incredibly courageous to do on that particular stage. So Jonathan Glazer, I'm a big fan of his. I've only seen Under the Skin and Zone of Interest, but Under the Skin, I really love. It's his only, okay, well, I guess you could consider The Zone of Interest a horror film, too. I don't think it's the kind of thing that we'll ever talk about on this podcast, but it is horrifying. Yeah, Under the Skin is an adaptation, a very loose adaptation of a novel by Dutch author Mikkel Faber. And it's, broadly an alien invasion story. Scarlett Johansson plays a alien on Earth disguised as a human who, using her sexual wiles, lures men into a horrible pool of alien goo where she harvests them for meat or something. And throughout the process, she maybe becomes more human than she thinks along the way. It's a very kind of hokey way to describe the plot, but we'll dig more into specifics. But my burning question, I gotta go to you, Cleve, because I know this was your first time seeing this.
Me?
Especially on rewatch, I was like, I think that this is like a quintessentially Cleve-ass movie, so I want to know if I'm correct in that assertion.
Could not be more right, my friend. I am officially a Glazer. I'm out here glazing Glazer, dude.
Get glazed.
Yeah. I adored this movie. I loved the whole aesthetic. I was very pleasantly uncomfortable throughout the whole film. I love how distilled this film is down to its themes and just how carefully made it is. I'm gonna have kind of a difficult time talking about this one. I've been thinking about. I watched it a few hours ago, and I've spent much of that time just sort of like trying to process it. And I wish I had more time. Thankfully, like the details of this movie are quite sparse, but the context is rich.
Yeah, it's not a plot heavy film. It's a, you know, I think you could consider Under the Skin a vibes film. Like there is a plot, you know, things do happen, but I do think that it is more focused on atmosphere and themes and sort of like finding a way to view the world through alien eyes and how that kind of slowly starts to develop over time into like a more sort of humanistic sort of perspective. One of the things I think is really cool about this movie, what's really kind of fascinating about it, is that I think for like the first half of this movie, I think is like maybe one of the most horrifying films of the 2010s for me. But then somehow in the second half, it manages to become strangely heartfelt and like beautiful, like while still maintaining like the same like kind of tone and atmosphere as the first half, but it really like kind of blossoms into something like, I don't know, more profound and interesting by the end than what it sort of appears to be in the first half.
This film makes a very challenging attempt to make you empathize with a spider.
Yeah.
Like that's how I see it. They give you just enough information to see how horrifying this like trapdoor spider is, and then they show you how it feels when it feels pain. I thought that was quite powerful.
This is a movie I'm gonna appreciate unpacking with y'all because honestly, this is a movie that I feel like I respect a lot more than I enjoy. I think it's an incredible looking film. Like the cinematography is some of the best out there. I love kind of the sense of composition. My biggest challenge with this film, even on rewatch, has always been the objective distance of the camera and Glazer's approach, right? Because, you know, obviously it's intentional, right? Because it's a distancing effect. But I almost feel at times like we're losing a sense of wonder in how the strangeness of an alien on Earth would be, right? And we get attempts at it, right? Like I think about the mall sequence, right? When she's walking around the mall and it is a little off kilter and she does kind of look at the oddness of goods on display. But again, like I I feel like with the camera being so focused on Scarlett Johansson's alien character, we don't feel like an alien looking at the world, right? We are kind of just observing things as they unfold. And that's just my take on it. Again, I would love to unpack this further because like I really do respect a lot of what Glazer is doing here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that like what you're reading is correct, but I don't necessarily agree with how it's being read, I don't think. I think it depends on what you expect an alien's reaction to Earth would be. Because the way that I sort of read this is like, I think you're right. There is not really like a sense of wonder at being on what is to our protagonist, this alien, what is an alien planet for her. But I think that wonder is too much of a human emotion for that to make sense here. I think that this movie does what I really love in like all my favorite kind of alien centric movies, in that it makes the aliens feel truly alien. like something that is like so far disconnected from familiarity to us that it feels truly other. And that I think that having too much of like a sense of wonder at like the world around her, I don't think she's feeling that. I think that ultimately, and we'll unpack this as we go along, but I think ultimately the thesis of this story is that empathy is a trait that makes you uniquely human. And that over the course of the film, as she starts to develop a sense of empathy, as she observes empathy and starts to kind of absorb that into herself, and becomes more human, that the world becomes more wondrous to her. Like it never has a chance to fully like open up to that degree, but I think that at the beginning of the film, like the early stuff, it's supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be distant. It's supposed to be analytical. She is a entity with a singular purpose, which is to lure, trap, and slaughter prey, which is us, animals. You know? And so I think that having it be so disconnected kind of makes what we see as like a familiar world like feel more alien. You feel distanced from it in a way that we as people wouldn't be if we were in that mall or on that street. Does that make sense?
Sure, and I think in fairness, wonder is kind of the wrong word, for what I'm trying to describe here. It's, it's kind of seeing the subjectivity of Scarlett Johansson's Alien a little bit
Mm.
further, and I think that emphasizes the strangeness of the world, and it also kind of emphasizes, like, her journey growing in empathy throughout the movie. This isn't a super strong feeling that I have. Again, it's a really great movie in general.
Mhm.
And like I think a great example of like the early sections, like you were talking about with her just kind of being thrown into this completely without empathy is when she takes the woman's clothes in like the black void, and
Yeah,
the woman is like lying there paralyzed with a tear running down her face, and she's more interested in this little bug on
and
her
the ant.
finger.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think that like Scarlett Johansson's performance in this is really, really excellent. It's incredibly understated. It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of performance where if you go into it like not willing to meet it on its own terms, it might come across as like flat. I mean, there's obviously some intent behind that, that she's supposed to be like a totally cold, like emotionless, inhuman thing. Like she doesn't have reactions to the things that are like strong reactions to the things that are happening around her. But I think there's so much subtlety there, and like it's so like it's so chilling. Like she pulls it off like so authentically that I think it's scary. Like I do really feel like in the first half of this movie that between the way it's shot and everything, like it does feel like displacing. Like even though it's like familiar sights, it renders a lot of them uncanny. I don't know if I would go so far as to say liminal, that overused term that's so popular these days, but like the whole first half especially does have like a certain like sense of displacement that I think is really uncomfortable, but like marvelously so, like intentionally uncomfortable.
I think the most alien aspect of this film is the majority of the people we're talking to are just on the street in like Glasgow and Wales and like the UK, and they all have incredibly thick and weird accents that I can barely understand, and it's very alien to
Dude,
me.
I was thinking that too. I mean, I know
It's
Jonathan Glazer
intentional.
he's from the
Yeah.
UK, but like I do think that there is something interesting about setting it in like the country that maybe has the most difficult to decipher like English accent.
Well, it's great because the film starts with abstraction, right? A tiny dot, and it swells, and there's a strange sort of alien light, and a pod goes through a pod, and we're not sure. It's all very dry and clean and strange. But as it's happening, we're hearing sort of a something reminiscent of the Void Conf test in the Blade Runner 2049, where we're just hearing phonetics, sort of being played out, field, fear, etc. Like, and they're playing with sound, and as an eye slowly sort of forms out of the material, and we get a sense it's like birth for her, or it's her arrival. In my mind, there she's like possibly learning like the languages, she's being programmed or created, not like digitally programmed, but like physically manifested. And
Yeah, she's fixing her human speech pattern. She's practicing like the
right.
phonetic sounds required to make human mouth
Yeah.
noises.
It's all very clinical. And then when she enters the world, one of the first people we hear, she asks for directions, and they say, you want to be it's just like, oh, okay. And like it gives it's disorienting. And it has it's in a sense of like birth. And to me it does a great job of like immediately putting you in her very, very alien and foreign shoes.
No, totally.
Um
I couldn't agree more, because it's like, especially as Americans, like you recognize that that is English, but the accent is so thick that you can't understand it. So just sort of feel it's like, why can't I understand a language that I'm fluent in, you know?
I didn't watch this film with subtitles either, so like I really had to like strain for it, and I got it because I watch a lot of like media from the UK and the rest, and
Oh, we know.
The dialogue's also not really important in this
yeah, I'm a
movie, you know?
Mediva boo. We all know it, but anyway, carry on.
Well, I think one interesting thing about the background of those actors with the thick accent is one of Glazer's signature things of, the past two films between this and Zone of Interest is the use of hidden cameras. And this movie especially used a lot of hidden cameras, and a lot of those guys that approach were just people that approached Scarlett Johansson on the street as she wandered around with hidden cameras, and they picked, kind of the most intriguing ones to ask to kind of follow up with, the sort of walk-on part.
Do you want to take your clothes off and walk into a pool?
I feel like that's why you get such authentic, kind of weird, thick accent guys, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not the high Hollywood version of it by any means. It's
These are
like
real people.
actual
I think Scarlett Johansson is the only professional actor in this movie. There may be a couple of other parts.
the disfigured guy. He was in A Different Man last year.
Right, but I'm saying at the time that this was filmed, he was not an actor. They reached out to some charity organization that I'm blanking on the name of now, that like specifically like helps people with facial disfigurements.
Mm.
They were looking for an actor for this part, and so this guy was the one they found, and they brought him on. And he's very good. And yeah, like this movie has like given him some other acting opportunities. I've heard A Different Man is very good.
Yeah, I've heard it's excellent.
I still need to see it, but like yeah, even him, the guy who one of the other aliens, who's sort of like, I don't know, like the fixer, the enforcer, or whatever, the guy who rides around on the motorcycle. He's not an actor. He's like a professional motorbike racer. He's like a champion motorbike racer.
It shows in those
Well,
in
yeah,
the sequence where he's riding around. It looks so sick.
they had to get somebody, because like some of the
Yeah.
shot, like especially towards the end when they're like trying to hunt her down because she's gone rogue, they're just like driving at super high speeds on these like wet, foggy like moors and stuff. So they had to have somebody who is like a professional. So that dude's not a real actor. Like yeah, all of the dudes like on the street, the ones who come up to her like while she's driving around in the van, they had like hidden cameras like in the dash. So all of that feels very voyeuristic and naturalistic, because it is. And I think all of that stuff is really cool, and it just like adds to the just like impeccable atmosphere of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Scarlett Johansson is so directly a predator in this movie, right?
Mhm.
Because, she's driving around in her white van, kind of picking lonely men up off of the street. What's interesting is there is a sort of progression as we go because, like, as we see more and more men get picked up, we see more and more of the process, right? I think what's interesting is Glazer gives us so little at the beginning in terms of, she picks a guy up and he gets in the car and they say maybe one thing to each other, and then they get to like the abandoned house where she takes them into the void to, consume them. We don't really see the process of like flirtation on the way or getting from point A to Z. It's the catch and the consume. And as we go, we do get to see a little bit more of that, which I like.
Yeah,
Um,
we pretty much always get to see like a little bit of the initial conversation, sort of like that little bit of flirtation until they get in the car with her. But then we usually do cut like to the location, especially until we get to like Adam Pearson, the disfigured guy. Like that is sort of like the more prolonged scene. But I do like how like yeah, each time she picks up a new guy, we see more and more of the process of what happens to them when she picks them up, which is really horrifying.
You mentioned how we really only see the catch and consume and less of the middle at the beginning. And what I like about that is to me, I think we see almost surgically just enough. And it's less about the physical and the visual flirting and like the femme fatale elements that are usually shown in cinema, and it's more about like the emotional and empathetic connection in the dialogue between these men. Like the moment she, like with one of the first couple guys, it essentially cuts the moment she asks him if she's pretty, and then she tells him that he's handsome, because for most of these men, that's all they need.
Yeah,
Especially look, like she's driving around like Glasgow at the beginning, and she's very well cast as Scarlett Johansson. It's Scarlett Johansson driving around in a van in Glasgow. These guys don't need a lot.
right.
Beyond that. So
Well,
to me, everything that is there, like, it is just enough, and then we carry on. And I like that. I like that we don't sit in that too much. I think if this movie had been made in like the 90s, it would have it would have been more like she slowly takes off her dress with the first guy and their chest opens up and eats them or whatever, and like this movie would have been very different. But that's not really like really any time. I just think in worse hands. But
yeah. Well, I
not to
mean,
make
I
it like
do
a
think.
period thing, because like the 70s body snatchers, I think, is very similar to this film. And
I
you know
mean, I
taste.
think this film is like obviously like a feminist text in like many ways, but I do think that one of the most sort of obvious and most funny ways is that it is really honest about just like how generally stupid and like unaware men are when confronted with like a beautiful woman. It's because like you said, it's
Who
like
actually pays
they
attention to them?
it yeah, and it's like there's obviously something to be said about loneliness and all of this, especially once again with Adam Pearson's character later on. But it's like, yeah, it takes virtually nothing to get these men into the van with her,
I mean,
which is
she
like,
really just has to be there. Like that's all she has to do is
yeah,
just be in that space. Like especially like at the dance club, right? Like that guy just comes up to her and like he puts his hand over her on the wall and is like, "Hey, can I like let me buy you a drink?" And he's very insistent. They're trying to ensnare her. So that makes it all the easier for her to ensnare them.
yeah,
Flies with
right,
honey and all
exactly.
that.
Yeah, classic honeypot routine.
Yeah, she's essentially preying on predators.
It is funny that a lot of people, while they were filming this movie, did not recognize Scarlett Johansson as Scarlett Johansson, despite the fact that she looks exactly like Scarlett Johansson.
She does, but like here's the thing. Like if I'm out and about in just my hometown, and a van pulls up and a beautiful person who looks like so much like Scarlett Johansson asks me for directions, I'm gonna think, damn, that person looks so much like Scarlett Johansson, and then give them directions. Like I'm not, because
You
out of context, like why would Scarlett Johansson be driving like an old van?
you're driving a van around Glasgow.
Yeah, she's Scarlett Johansson. So
That's
like,
exactly it. That's exactly
yeah,
why.
and again, like Scarlett Johansson, especially in like what was this 2013, like
So the movie
like
came out. Yeah.
yeah, Johansson is like our like as far as I'm concerned, like aesthetically, like I'm open to other suggestions, but like Scarlett Johansson is like the 2010s like aesthetic standard, like Marilyn Monroe, like
Yeah, sure.
or Aubrey Hepburn, you know, like she's our that like for
Yeah,
that
sure. Well,
period. So like she is in many cases like the feminine ideal, and so yeah, like putting her in those situations, like again, no one's gonna think that when she's like driving a fucking van, like she's like a superstar. she's Black Widow in the Marvel movies, like she's a
Yeah,
big
this
deal.
was right after the first Avengers, after all.
yeah.
Yep.
And honestly, like that all of that context, just like I do have a lot of respect for Scarlett Johansson as an actress, just like in
Yeah.
general. Like she's been in a lot of good movies.
Mm-hmm.
But especially to like have that kind of like huge, literally blockbuster success, like being in like the MCU and Avengers, like right when it's like starting to hugely pop off, like right at the beginning of that, and still be willing to be in a tiny little nothing indie film like this in a role that demands a lot from her, particularly a lot of nudity. Like she was not in a position in her career where she needed to take a movie like this.
Sure.
Yeah.
In fairness,
Love the game.
Jonathan Glazer, even at this point in his career, was like a super respected auteur name to work
Sure,
with.
sure.
And the fact that he doesn't do a lot of movies makes him even more kind of in demand for
Well,
actors.
well that and
I
that
would
that actually like speaks to my point, is that like Johansson is like an actor who's interested in the craft,
yes.
who would be eager to work with somebody like Jonathan Glazer on this very slow, surreal, kind of obtuse, like weird little indie film with a respected, but especially at this time, not prolific filmmaker like Jonathan Glazer, when somebody like her could be like, I got Avengers money. I don't need this shit. I don't
Yeah.
need to do full frontal nudity. Like I'm making so much fucking money being in Marvel shit, you know? So that's all just to say kudos, because like I think that she's extremely good in this.
Well, you know, on that note, just while we're talking about like production level stuff, and to further reinforce like respect on Scarlett Johansson, like she also like of the whole collective of like big name actors in those types of movies has fought against Disney the most. She's taken the most steps to like sue Disney for pay and to be litigious against them from taking advantage of her at a studio that it very notably like tries to hire people based on prestige as opposed to like the like running rates and the rest.
Yeah. Well, and I think her character died in one of those later Avenger movies, and I think Disney was talking about like, doing some typical Marvel magic whatever to bring her character back, and she's like, I don't want to be in these movies anymore.
Yeah,
And she
which I respect.
basically told
and,
him, yeah,
and
I
here's the
mean,
thing.
because again, the fucking they got Downey Jr. back to be Doctor Doom or whatever in this new one because they offered him $80 million to be in one movie.
That money.
It's like, yeah, that entire movies are made with a fraction of that. This movie was made for $13 million and it bombed. It made like no money. It did not make its money back. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I really respect actors who do it for the craft. Like, I heard a story about Carrie Coon. She was in that first Avengers Endgame, or
Oh,
Infinity War.
I read that same article. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
she's in the first.
I
Oh, no, it's She's in one of the Avengers films, I think, before one of those Endgames that sets up her. She's like one of Thanos' generals or
No,
some
no,
shit.
no. She's in one of them. I heard her husband Tracy Letts talk about it. Author of
Yuri
Bug.
Coon was in an
But
Avengers?
yeah,
Yeah.
she was in. Which one came first? Endgame or Infinity War? I don't
Infinity
even
War.
know.
Infinity War came
Okay, she was
first.
in that one,
Okay.
and then they came back asking if she would be in the next one, and she's like, "This movie made a bajillion dollars. Are you going to pay me more?" And they're like, "No." And she's
I
like, "Well, okay,
Jesus.
not gonna be in
Yeah.
it."
She did. You wouldn't recognize her because she's like a CG character, and I don't even know if she has any lines. She's like one of Thanos'
okay.
like generals who looks like a fucking hammerhead shark or some shit. I don't know.
Okay. I was like,
Uh,
I saw that movie.
you
Like
wouldn't know.
I can't
I
picture Yuri
Yeah.
Coon in that
Well, it's
movie.
because like she started her career out doing mocap, and so that's why they brought her on, which is
Is
cool.
she
Um,
really? Okay. I guess I don't know as
I
much
um,
didn't
about
know
Yuri
that.
Coon as I thought.
yeah. There's I think the article was spurned off of that or spawned off of that interview that I didn't listen to, but you did, Ben. But then they went
Okay.
into some more detail and interviewed her for follow ups. That whole like infrastructure is so stupid. I also for research this week watched the Black Widow film that she's in. It is really stomach turning to me to see like how many of like 15 12 I don't know, 10 to 15 years of these like fucking MCU movies it took to just star her, like to star like a woman as the lead. And it gets like a fraction of the budget and effects and time and care as the other movies. Like it's and of course it didn't do as well. So it's like they also like self-fulfill like that same stupid like shit-lib prophecy where it's like, you know, like, oh, these movies like it's starring a woman so it's not going to do well, and it's like, no, it won't do as well, so you have to put more into it, but then they don't. And so like that it of course it bombs. Like the fucking Falcon movie's the same, and like I assume, and like it's just it's so stupid to like sabotage like a character like that.
They did other Lady Marvels. Like they did the what's her face?
Yeah, those also
Captain
like
Marvel
look like shit.
Or whatever. That movie was
And
bad.
I mean comparatively, like even, but yeah, at least the cast is decent. Like it's like Florence
I don't
Pugh
know.
and David Harbour, and that's enough.
Let's not talk about Marvel. Let's talk about Under the
Yeah.
Skin.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
Let's talk about a movie that I actually like.
course.
I do think that like the production of this movie is pretty interesting. Because I think Glazer started production like right after he finished Birth in 2004, and it took like 10 years to get made because it went through like a number of processes. It was originally supposed to be a much bigger, like effects heavy, like kind of sci-fi epic. Um out of curiosity, I went and I sort of read up on the novel because I obviously didn't have time to read the source material before this. It's a very, very loose adaptation of the novel. Like it's the same premise, but like you know more about the aliens. They have names, they talk to each other, you learn stuff about their planet. Like it's fair, like it's thematically, it's like very sort of like anti-capitalist, like anti-factory farming. There's like a whole like class narrative on the alien planet and all of this stuff, so on and so forth. And originally they had written a script to be sort of more true to the novel. And after going back and reading it, Jonathan Glazer was like, you know what? No, like I want to tell this story, but I don't want to film this book. Basically, I think something like that is the way that he said it. And then there was another iteration where like there was supposed to be still sort of more true to the book where it's supposed to be focused on like the alien, like an alien couple like disguised as like a human couple living on a farm, and like that's where they sort of like have and process the humans, and like Brad Pitt was attached to be like the male alien, and they rewrote it again, and they pared it down to this very lean, abstract, like totally exposition free, like sort of weird contemplative like movie about becoming human through gaining a sense of empathy. I think it's so much better for it. Like the book sounds cool. Like I might read it at some point, but like I I love how like unassuming and kind of like obtuse this movie is. Like it doesn't even never says it never even says that like Scarlett Johansson is an alien. Like, she obviously is, but it never uses those words. Never gives you any kind of backstory. Everything is just like you can glean these little bits and pieces from like things you see, things you experience, but largely it leaves you to put the pieces together on your own.
I'm imagining an alternate version of this movie where like Scarlett Johansson tempts the guys into the space, and like it's a big electronic like showy like sci-fi thing, and they're like Scarlett Johansson straps him to the table naked while she's like pulling levers and laughing and like giving exposition on her home world. Like
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, way worse in
that's
this
film.
that.
this remixed as a '50s alien movie
Yeah.
would be something special, but completely
Yeah,
different. Yeah, this movie is incredibly stripped back, to the realm of the observable, right? Because it's not really particularly about Scarlett Johansson's inner world by any
no,
means as the alien, right? We get everything we're given through observation. And honestly, that approach reminds me quite a bit of uh Nicholas Roeg
mm,
between Don't Look Now and especially his film The Man Who Fell to Earth with
the
David
David
Bowie.
Bowie one.
Yeah. Very similar premise, right? Like alien comes to Earth, assimilates. Again, it's one of those things where by sticking so closely to the observable, it grounds the story certainly because like you said, the story is very minimal and simple, but like almost everything we see is directly in service of the story, right? Because
Yeah,
it is
totally.
such an observable approach, almost documentary approach. We aren't seeing kind of necessarily non-plot elements. We're not seeing kind of thematic stuff. Everything builds towards kind of the main narrative drive.
Absolutely, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's trying to explain what you're seeing to you or like to
Yeah,
present it in such a way that you're like supposed to feel a way about it. Like it does feel like a very sort of objective lens, which it's interesting because like from that approach, like it definitely feels very much like from Scarlett Johansson's perspective, but at the same time, her inner processes, her thoughts, whatever, are entirely impenetrable even to us. It's like you can sort of project your own sort of feelings and thoughts onto her, but what she's actually feeling in any of these moments, what she's actually thinking is unknowable because she's kind of under the skin, under the human skin that she's wearing, she's something truly alien and unknowable.
sure.
Um,
But at the same time, her objective is very clear and
yes,
understandable, right?
yes, yeah. What she's doing, like her, yeah, exactly. Like you said, her goal is clear, but how she feels about what she's doing and what she's seeing is unclear. We start to get more of a sense of it further in the movie as she starts to develop a sense of human empathy or something akin to it.
Even a sense of self, right? Like, I
Well,
think
it's
the
certainly
big
existential. Yeah.
a
Like
sense of human self, I think.
yeah, well, the skin they're embodying, right?
Right.
Because, like, the big drive of this kind of shift in her and the film as a whole is her looking in the mirror, kind of
Right.
recognizing the skin she's embodying. Um,
Right. After the interaction where she, lures Adam Pearson back to the, to one of her layers, the disfigured man, and sort of like having to work through this like sort of new process of seducing him because she can't play to his vanity like she would to other men, because like obviously he does have such heavy like facial disfigurement and is so self-conscious about that, that she has to sort of confront like, I mean, she literally has to develop a sense of empathy in order to even lure him back in the first place, because she has to imagine what it's like to not feel comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, well, the process of that is interesting, right? Because, like, normally, like, her go-to is, like, saying someone has a beautiful face or a beautiful smile or something like
Right.
that, where,
Beautiful
like, with
eyes.
Adam Pearson, she understands that she can't do that, so she goes to the hands?
I was reading apparently that Adam Pearson himself contributed a lot to that scene in sort of like coaching her through ways to flatter him, essentially, that would be like effective on him in real life, like how, you know, things that he would take as like believable compliments and so on and so forth. Like he essentially sort of helped shape that scene to coach her through like how to seduce this character. And like you said, yeah, she knows that she can't compliment him on like his facial features, so she goes to the hands instead. And I bet that that's something that he told her directly to do. It's like, you know, tell me I
Yeah.
have beautiful hands, something like that. Which, and I think that does all, it feels very genuine. And it is after that scene, you know, after she takes him into the room and submerges him in the goo, that she comes back down and she sees herself in the mirror. And it's like, presumably this wouldn't be the first time she's seeing herself, but it's the first time she's, you know, capital S, seeing herself, right? And that's sort of like the turning point, because after that, what does she do? We don't see it happening, but she goes back and she gets him, she frees him, she lets him go.
Yeah, well, we do talk about it like it's a hinge point, which it is, but you know, it is kind of a process throughout that first half. You know, I think one key point is when she's wandering the streets and a group of like drunk girls pull her into the club, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, she starts to realize that she is seen as another woman, right? Like all of these other women, you know, where like it was so detached before that she was purely a predator. And like we're going from, you know, the beginning to kind of that sort of seed of self-awareness to her looking in the mirror and gaining even more of it. And
Right.
it develops even further as she tries to assimilate with things that, you know, an alien would perceive as bringing joy to humans, I suppose you could say.
Can I ask you guys something?
Yeah.
I'll put on my pretentious film nerd hat for a second. Is the goo literal?
I mean, probably yes and no. Like what, like where you go, like what else would it be if not literal? But like what do you mean by that?
Like,
Yeah.
is
Is it
it?
representative of something else, or is she literally pulling men into goo?
I I think somewhere in between. Like, I think, obviously, like she is preying on and harvesting these men, and she is an alien. Like that's especially by the end of the film, like explicit. But are we not seeing the whole picture there? Right? Especially the first time it happens. The transition between the guy entering the house and just being in a black void is abrupt. And it largely is every time, right? Like, and not even to the degree where like the space sort of fades away behind them, but like they walk into a rundown home and then suddenly they're in the fucking upside down or whatever, right? Like I read it like they're like almost like hypnosis, and they're sort of being brought into a like psychological state the way that like certain prey or certain predators hypnotize. That it could be that they're really facing something closer to something more akin to a fire in the sky abduction or something along those lines, or
Mm.
there is like there are more literal events happening to them where they're being strapped to a table or something is occurring and there is a big machine that sucks them away or a giant spider creature or something that we never see, because we're largely sort of seeing it from their experience, right, and from where they've been sort of brought to. But I don't know, like, or is it just like it's a black energy field, and like the goo is a type of alien goo that does this? I don't know, like, and I love that we don't have an answer for that, but I thought I'd
mean,
kind of ask you guys.
I think it's I kind of see it as all of the above. I mean,
Mm.
I think that, like, yes, from a like strictly plot perspective, I do think it's literal. Like, whether that void or whatever is like she leads them through a portal to her home planet or something, or whatever the fuck that is, because every time they're going into a different house. But yeah, like you said, they walk through the door into darkness, and instead of there being a house on the inside, it's just this infinite black void with sort of like a mirrored floor, and like they're lit, like you can see them, but there's no apparent light source. It's very uncanny, and the men are in this sort of state of hypnosis, and they're following Scarlett Johansson deeper and deeper into this room, into this void, as they're taking their clothes off. Once they're fully naked, they keep following her. She remains walking on the surface of the floor while they sink down into it and are gone, basically. And like, yeah, I mean, I think that you can kind of view that as sort of from sort of a non-literal like perspective, and but I do think that the big like counter to that I give, like from a narrative like plot perspective, is like in the one scene where we see like what happens to them once they are beneath the goo. Like, that feels too specific to be entirely metaphorical. I think you can like bring your own sort of metaphorical perspective to what this room and what the space represents, sort of being tied up in the moment, like the feeling of sex and like love and romance, and sort of being like sucked into this quagmire that like pulls you down, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. But I do also think that it is like a literal alien space where
Yeah.
these men are essentially pickled and have their meat loosened up from their skin and then sucked out of it, you know, with a siphon, leaving just a horrible flapping skin
Maybe the
bag
most striking
remaining.
shot in the film
Yeah.
is
That
just that
scene, that scene
emptied
is
skin.
that scene is fucking horrifying.
It's so
It
fucking
Yeah.
is.
scary.
This is the first time I watched this movie since I first saw it in like 2014, and large portions of this movie I had forgotten, but that scene has very, very, very powerfully stuck with me for the last 10 years because it is so fucking scary.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me of like the shots I've seen of like undersea creatures picking something apart, or like, have you seen that footage of I think it's a shrimp or no, it's a crab. It's a crab that's crawling along a pipe, and like there's a hole in the pipe, and the pressure equalization just
Oh
completely
yeah, it
like
just
makes
gets
the
stuck.
crab just disappear
The
into
crab just gets
like
sucked
the hole
into.
is like this big and the crab is this big and it just walks over it and just disappears.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
yeah, and it very much reminds me of that, like just being completely like just like just ripped out. And again, there are a few things as terrifying as the mystery, the mysterious depths, like, and the deep
Yeah.
seas and oceans are, and sort of weaponizing that for like this really alien horror sequence is awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why it works so well, right? Because like even if it's literal, which I think it is, it's so abstracted because again, we're in the world of the observable. It's so abstracted that it feels truly alien. It's
Yeah,
it's
Yes.
something that we're not meant to understand the mechanics of,
yeah,
you
Yeah,
know?
and it's supposed to be
exactly.
disorienting. Yeah, like
It's entirely disorienting, yeah, and it's like, what is this place? Like, is this her home world? Is this what it's like where she's from? Is it just these endless black voids? Like, what the fuck is this? And like it, I really do like the progression that we see. It's like every time she brings a guy back, we see a little bit more and more. It's like the first time we just see the guy sort of go under, and then the next time like we see the guy go under and then she walks back, but then we sort of see from his perspective like her walking above him. But then that next time, like yeah, the guy goes in and he sinks below, and then we really see like the whole process. And it feels like, even though this movie came out before Get Out, like the closest cinematic analog I can think of is the sunken place in Get Out, because it is kind of like sinking into this like it's watery, but at the same time it's not. Like there's no bubbles, there's no like noticeable like movement of water, but like the
It's
their
cold.
features are their features are kind of like they obviously shot it underwater, so like they have the kind of distortion of like when you look at something underwater where it's like kind of slightly exaggerated.
Yeah, my thought
um
was that it starts that way. I want to rewatch the sequence, but like when he goes beneath and like those full shots, where yeah we get like his full body like hanging there. I'm pretty sure that's underwater. But then I think some of the close-ups, so with his reactions, he has like kind of icy makeup on, and he is above water, but there is like they're shooting behind water or something. I'm not 100% on
could
that, but
be
it looks
could be
cool. It looks
it's
good
hard to
regardless.
tell. But anyway,
Um,
he sort of like is down there and he looks and he sees like another guy, but the other guy, he doesn't look so good. He doesn't look so great. He's kind of like bloated and like, I mean, essentially what it is, you can kind of tell the makeup is very good. It looks like his skin has been like everything under his skin has sort of been like softened and is like detached from the casing, like a sausage basically. But what's so horrifying is that like the new guy who falls in there, he sort of like reaches out and like grabs the other guy's hand a little bit, and you see the other dude's finger like sort of close on his hand just a little bit, but enough to tell like that it is a discernible motion, so that this dude is still alive at this point. And then just all of a sudden, just all of the meat and everything is just like sucked out of the back of him. Like we don't see
into the
where it
darkness.
goes, just
Yeah.
into the darkness, but all of a sudden his shape just sort of like decompresses. And
Yeah.
we're just left with like a tattered skin suit that just sort of like gently drifts down. And then we get this beautiful, horrifying, sort of abstracted shot of like another black void with like a trough of like blood and meat and viscera just being sucked into like an opening where there's a bright red light, and it just all gets sucked in there and it's gone. It's fucking pure nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
It's
And I
so
love
upsetting.
And I really love that like the space doesn't make sense in the location she takes them.
No.
Like at all. Like these are like small thresholds and abandoned buildings where like you would need like an amphitheater of space for the lighting to work the way it does. And there's a million alien ways that space could be excused. And yeah, again, we're not told why, and it makes it all the more horrifying. But like, yeah, I almost see it like she's not just traveling space, but she's traveling like space time, and that she essentially is like a dimensional trapdoor spider. She's from
Yeah,
like just a
where
realm like right past ours, and like they're just kind of coming through, like ugh, terrifying.
wherever this space that she's taking them is not actually within these buildings that she's taking them to. Like there is
Yeah.
some kind of, yeah, portal, or it's like a TARDIS or something, bigger on the inside, whatever. But yeah, I mean
Or
it's
or they're just getting beamed up, classically.
yeah, right.
But who's to
Although
say?
was something that I noticed this time that I totally glossed over the first time I watched this movie, is taking us back to the very beginning. I sure have talked a little bit about how like we sort of see her, like those sort of abstract shapes you're talking about coalesce into an eye. So it's sort of like her human form coming together, whatever. And we see the biker go, and he picks up this woman and takes her back to this. Only time we see it's a white void where Scarlett Johansson strips her down and takes her clothes and all of this. But the next shot after all of that is a wide shot of sort of like a project housing high rise, and the top of the building is sort of obscured in clouds, and you can just faintly through the clouds see some lights that sort of go off in different directions. And then we see Scarlett Johansson and the motorcycler like come out of the building and get in. He takes his motorcycle out of the back of the van, gets on and goes off, and she gets into her van. So it's like just that there's little hints of the lights in the sky up above the building. It's like that's her coming down from the spaceship. They're dropping her off on the top of this high rise. I totally missed that little, like, it is such like a subtle thing that, like, if you're not really paying attention, like, it's very easy to miss. But I love those little details.
You've both seen Fire in the Sky, right?
I've seen the alien abduction scene from Fire in the Sky. I've never seen the full movie.
It's fascinating because like the alien abduction scene in Fire in the Sky is by miles like it's
Pretty
really the
scary.
only horror piece of horror in the film. There's other elements of him like readjusting from it and the rest, but we don't see much of the aliens beyond that. Like it's largely like a normal film, that sequence, and then recovery. It's one of the things I really love about Fire in the Sky is that like if you like apart from that sequence, like it's a fairly regular film, but that one aspect of it is just like deeply kind of recontextualizing the film. And I feel like these films are very similar in that respect, in that like the mundane makes the alien all the more terrifying. Like, and I would recommend watching all of Fire in the Sky for that additional context and seeing that scene, like the like how carefully it's set up in polarity, as the rest of the film. And I think like this movie captures that same thing with like the hidden camera aesthetic. It's just regular people on the street. It's so normal, and then the most terrifying surreal by juxtaposition. And I think that's such a cool move. While I'm rambling, I also wanted to touch on at the opening scene. It's not a match cut, but it's a sort of contextual match cut. I love that we go from the eye to the waterfalls at the beginning. Like that's a very nice shot. But then we also get that sequence of him on the motorcycle, and they have a camera like on the handlebars, and he's driving, and we're looking largely at his helmet, and we're seeing the reflection sort of pull by, and it's very, very dark, and we really can only see the helmet because of like those small lights and make context of what it is in that shot, and it feels like a strange eye, and they've sort of kind of reworked that to feel like and you know, like mirrors or eyes, cameras or eyes, etc. It's that whole thing. But like, I do love that distortion.
Another cool detail is that I really love is that, like, you know, the whole every time we see him, he's wearing this like full body like racer's jumpsuit, and then
Looks
later
cool.
in the movie he calls in like some others that are just like him, also in the full body racer jumpsuits, like motorcycle guys, and it's like it does have a kind of like interesting like quote spaceman quality to it, you know, that I think is kind of like fun and kitsch. Like it reminds me of like the spacesuits in like 2001 A Space Odyssey, or like in Solaris, like the Tarkovsky movie, like kind of those old fashioned like 50s and 60s sci-fi spacesuits. um and yeah, I think it's cool to have him sort of like zipping through the streets, and like the lights like reflected on his helmet flying by. Like it's kind of got like I don't know, it's got like a spacey vibe to it, like flying through space, you know?
Well, it's that idea that like alien invaders are reworked time travelers in a way, right? Like they're going back, or they're visiting a place that they haven't, you know, that they haven't been before, and where they have to conceal themselves. They're robots in disguise,
A
right?
more primitive
And
place, yeah.
yeah, to a more primitive place where they have to disguise themselves. And it's like, okay, well, if you went to the Middle Ages, you'd look like a knight, you know, like, and to be an enforcer, like you have to sort of match what like that sort of modern equivalent is, and for that's fucking motorcyclists.
Cool biker guys, yeah.
Yeah, cool biker guys, and yeah, I like that. I like that part a lot.
What did you guys think of Scarlett Johansson's accent work in this movie?
Great.
Yeah, convincing. I mean, she doesn't have like a ton of dialogue, but I thought her, they gave her a typical like English accent. They didn't make her go full Scottish. Um,
Oh, well,
I did read that like that bit you mentioned at the beginning, Cleve, where we're sort of like hearing like the characters, practicing her phonics and stuff, was just a recording of her working with her dialect coach, getting her phonics right for her English accent. They
Yeah,
just
Scarlett
recorded.
Johansson trying to become the creature trying to
Yeah,
become human. That's sick. I love that. That's
fun,
so
right?
that's so rad. Holy shit.
Yeah, I think it's good, convincing. But
Yeah.
again, I don't live in the UK, so like I don't know what like a perfectly convincing accent is. I don't know.
I think the litmus test is that they were doing it on hidden camera, and the native people didn't. Well, I like it too because like she seems to have like a more like gentrified like city accent, and these are like these are fucking or specifically like a Londoner accent, and she's in Glasgow, and then Wales, where like the accents are much more like country thick, and like still cities in their in respect, but in metropolitan areas, but like just much thicker accents. And
Did she
so
ever
she
go to
still sort of
Wales? I
feels
think
a
she's in.
little out of town. Well, I
I
saw
think
some
she's in
Welsh
Scotland the whole
flags and
time.
some of those castles, like that castle they visit at the end. I think by that point she's in.
I think
I could be
that's
wrong.
no, no, she's in Scotland. All those
She's in
characters
Scotland
are
the whole
still.
film. I know she's in
Yeah,
Scotland at the
are in Scotland.
beginning, but
Yeah, I think she's. I'm pretty sure she's in Scotland the whole time.
mm,
I don't know.
okay.
I don't know. I don't live there. I might be wrong. Whatever. Fuck you.
Mm. There's just enough like disparity between like the people that she's talking to. She doesn't sound local, and I think that works well enough to
Yeah.
bring disparity between the two. But again, the most important part of that litmus test is she's talking with other people in the UK and they buy it. Like
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
literally.
also like she doesn't sound local, but I think it's one of those cases where it's like for people living in the UK, if you're in Scotland and you hear an English accent, that's like for us like living in New York and hearing a southern accent,
Yeah,
like it's
vice versa
like
though. Yeah.
it's not gonna like you'll make note of it, but it's not gonna be like what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
Um
I think just to close it with the accent thing, like I don't think her accent work is impeccable, but again, she has so little lines that it doesn't matter all that much. Plus, like as an alien, it gets more of a pass, right? Because
Yeah. Of course.
obviously she's foreign
She's faking
to
being a person. Like
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough for me, like I think it's a perfectly passable English accent. Like maybe it's only weird because it's coming out of Scarlett Johansson's mouth and we know it's Scarlett Johansson, but I don't know, man. Um, I do want to talk about another particular scene. Chronologically we're all over the place, but I think this is the other, for me at least, the other most upsetting scene in the film outside of the dude getting sucked out of his skin, and that's when she goes to the beach and
Oh
she's
fuck.
yeah,
Oh.
that this scene is pretty rough because like she's like sees a guy who's like swimming and she starts talking to him and learns that he's from out of the country and he's been sleeping on the beach in a little tent, so perfect victim, doesn't have people waiting for him, doesn't have people won't notice that he's missing, so on and so forth. But like while she's sort of like working on picking him up, he gets distracted because farther down the beach there's like a young family, like a parent, two parents, like their baby and like a dog. They get distracted because like the wife is like swimming out, it's like the dog is being like sucked out to sea, and we
I shouted like
yeah
when
we
it cuts to the water, because like we see that there's panic happening in the distance first. The husband is shouting something and the
yeah
wife is swimming out to the water, and you think, oh, the baby is like getting caught in the undertow, whatever, and then we see it's the dog with a ball in its mouth, and I got very very upset. Like I was really not happy with seeing that dog out there and like getting pulled out the undertow. And like my mind immediately started racing. Like, oh my god, if that was Piglet, I would like, and it got me really good.
Yeah, and well, we essentially see this whole family drown,
I
basically.
don't care about them, but the dog, man,
Like,
that sucks.
like
Like,
I mean, the dog obviously sucks, but like the wife is out trying to get the dog, and the water's very like rough and choppy, and so the husband goes out to start trying to help her, and so the swimmer that Scarlett Johansson's talking to goes to try to help, and we like see him like manage to pull the husband ashore. But the wife and the dog are gone. Then the husband just gets back up and runs like right back out into the surf, and the swimmer is kind of like lying on the beach exhausted, sort of like struggling to get up, and Scarlett Johansson just like walks up to him, just like picks up a rock and just bonks him over the head, and drags him back to the van, drags him past the crying, like, I don't know, like 18-month-old toddler probably that is left all on the beach, just totally ignores it. Like, to add onto that, like after we see her like leave with the body, then the biker guy shows up later to sort of like clean up the evidence or whatever, and like takes down the guy's tent and packs up all of his stuff, and we see him like walking towards the baby who's like still on the beach crying, and you get this kind of moves like, oh no, he's gonna take the baby, but somehow more horribly he walks up and picks up like a sweater or like a shirt off the ground and like bundles it into the pack, totally ignores the baby, and walks off. And then there's just like a prolonged shot of just like the baby sitting there by itself, just like crying, looking around for any source of comfort, and it's just like, oh man, that scene is awful. It's just like a prolonged tragedy. But I do think that like it's, to Ben's point, every scene being sort of important towards advancing the narrative, like I do think that's an important scene for Scarlett Johansson's character, because I think it's the first time that we really see her witness empathy and like acts of human selflessness, like the swimmer, like risking his own life to try to help these other people. And we see her in the car later, like listening to the radio, and they're talking about the family disappear, and like they couldn't find the baby either, so something happened to the baby, so on and so forth. And like we don't really she's not really reacting to that, just like she doesn't really react to much in this part of the movie. But like I do think that that's kind of like a crucial moment early on for her starting to develop a sense of humanity, maybe, even if we don't necessarily see it in her at the time. Like all we're really from her is this kind of like horrifying alien indifference to suffering. Like I think that's like what the most like upsetting thing about that scene is both her and the biker, and just how they don't react to the suffering of the child or the suffering of anybody else. Like that's what gets to the like empathetic part of you as the viewer. I think that like you want to help these people, you want to help the baby too, and the fact that these characters are just like not even can't even be bothered is like more it's more horrifying than if they took the baby for meat, or if they seem to be deriving some sort of like malicious pleasure in what's happening. It's the indifference that is so scary.
well, it's the baby is encountering a similar fate to the men who are trapped, right? Like the men are trapped in these underwater, like vast empty spaces, and there's no comfort, there's no anything, right? They're just alone, naked, and abandoned,
Left to
and
die
left to
slowly.
die. And that's essentially the same fate as the infant.
It's true.
As far as we know.
What I find curious about that is like with her killing the beach bum surfer guy with a rock and dragging him off, she's almost putting him out of his misery.
She doesn't kill him.
That's
She's
right.
knocked
Yeah.
him out. We see, because we see when she's driving in the car, that he's in the seat. She's got him in the seat next to her, and he's kind of stirring. He's the one who we see get sucked out of his skin later.
Oh, okay.
That's
I didn't
the yeah,
put those 2 together because we don't see him do the void sequence like the
right.
others, which I think is fine because we get kind of the
Yeah,
catch.
she's an opportunistic predator. She doesn't need to lure this guy. He's weak, he's vulnerable. All she has to do is knock him out and drag him to the van. Um, and like yeah, I mean, because of how distorted he is, like by the time we see him again, and like bloated and nasty he looks, like it's hard to tell that it's the same guy, but it's yeah, that's the swimmer who we see get sucked out of his skin. So yeah, I mean, she's not she sure ain't putting him out of his misery. He doesn't even get the hope of some pussy like the other guys get. I do like when she picks up the guy in the club and how they're like in the club and like dancing, and it kind of like hard cuts to him just like in the void, like naked but like still dancing, you know? Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
a
like
sense of humor to it.
and there's a sense of humor to it, but also it's like he at that point he's hypnotized, he's under the spell, he doesn't even realize that he's gone to a new location. You know, it's just like for him, it's just, you know, he's just waking up. Not even waking up. It's just like he's goes from being in the club to fucking, you know, boogieing his way into a horrifying death in a puddle of alien goo. I was curious how they accomplish that, the effect of like her walking on the surface while the men behind her like sink into like the goo. Apparently the way they did it is they had a pool, and there was a floor in the pool, so that like they would have her far enough ahead walking, and then as the man was walking behind her, the floor that he was walking on would start to lower.
Hmm.
So he keeps walking forward. She's far enough still walking on a surface, but the surface that he's walking on goes down. So it seems like he's there. The men are wading into water while she's walking on the surface.
I
It's a very
love.
cool effect.
Well,
I mean, we joked
you know what
about
that sounds.
him doing virtual insanity, but this is
Yeah,
the same type of like visual illusion
I was
type of
gonna
Yeah,
make the
stuff.
same
totally.
joke. Yeah, like yeah. Um, yeah, leave it to the virtual insanity guy to like play with the floor movement in that
Yeah.
sequence. It's so
That's
sick.
cool. I mean, yeah, I think that it's certainly not a stretch to say that experience shooting that Jamiroquai music video probably gave him the idea for how to do that effect.
And I also like how metaphorically it puts these figures sort of in her position. Like these characters, these men are suddenly trapped beneath the surface in an alien world. And that's her same situation as well. Even as a predator figure, like she's sort of trapped in human skin in an alien space. And even though she's preying on these people, like she is experiencing that same suffering that they are. And as I've probably mentioned a million times on the podcast at this point, like the Greek root of sympathy is I suffer with you, right? And so like to really understand Scarlet here, like even as she's preying on these people, we're getting a sense of her mentality of like who she is, so we can empathize with her later on.
Well, and to take that even a step further, like at the end of the movie, like what her undoing ultimately is she herself as a predator who's preying on these men ends up in a position that so many women do, falling prey to a man. Like once she sort of like breaks out of this like cycle of like luring and slaughtering these men and sort of like goes off on her own, starts sort of like trying to become human or whatever, in so doing she puts herself in, or she I don't want to say puts herself, I don't want to victim blame, she finds herself in the same position that so many women do. And that like when she is an object of sexual desire without the intent to lure and entrap, then she ends up the victim of the resulting violence, right? It's like when she's on the run, basically, we're jumping all over the place, but like the end of the movie is basically she's on the run in like the Scottish Highlands. She's in the woods and she runs into this logger.
And why is she on the run?
Well, because we mentioned she lets Adam Pearson, the disfigured man, she lets him go,
Yes.
and she goes rogue. So she's now being hunted by the motorcycle guy and his motorcycle buddies. So she is, trying to go out into the wilderness. There's a whole little bit where she like meets a kind stranger in like a small town. He sort of takes her in, she gets to experience a little bit of the human life. She sort of like, she doesn't really seduce him, but she like tries to have like a a genuine like sexual encounter with him, and is unable to because she's not human, because she is alien.
One detail about that, early sequence right before they have the sexual encounter that I really love is they're in like a castle and he's guiding her by the hand down these stairs in this castle,
Yeah,
and it's almost a role reversal, right? Because
reversal.
rather
Yeah,
than her leading into, the depths, he's leading her. And I think, we see just a glimmer of kind of an awareness of
yeah,
like the act that she's been doing in her eyes, right? Like the
totally.
the performance again is extremely subtle, but it's there in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're 100% correct. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to gloss over all of that too much. Like we're going pretty long, so like we should get to the end soon. But like, yeah, that whole like sort of third act is it's a departure from the movie that we've seen up till this point, but I do think that it manages to take a lot of that cold sort of indifferent alien horror and turn it into something that does feel more human and more heartfelt. Like even just watching her like try to become human, she can't, but even the act of trying to is like, it's kind of like, it's sweet, it's kind of heartbreaking that she can't like really do it. There's some humor in it, like the scene where she goes to the restaurant and tries to like she tries to eat a piece of cake and she can't. She like takes a bite and like spits it back up immediately, and everybody in the restaurant's like, what the fuck, like what's wrong with you? It's like she's trying to do these human things, but her alien anatomy like literally will not allow her to. Like it's not really elaborated upon or said or stated explicitly, but like the reason that her like trying to have sex with this dude like doesn't really work is like, the way I read is like because she doesn't have human genitals. Like we've got him like kind of trying to like fumbling to like put his dick in her or
I
whatever,
want
and then
to.
she sits up, she like grabs the lamp and she's like examining between her legs. It's like, I
Well,
just read it as like she doesn't have a vagina. Like there's nowhere
I
for him to put his penis.
I read it differently, but I want to just get to the end and jump back to it. So if I can just put a footnote on my little 2 cents in that scene.
Sure. Yeah, well, so to jump back to what I was saying earlier, she after this she runs off. She's running through the wilderness. She meets this logger who's initially, he seems kind of weird, but he goes off and leaves her on her own. She falls asleep in like this little hut in the woods and wakes up to him like molesting her basically.
Well, it's not a
Runs off.
logger. Specifically, it's a fireman.
No,
And
he's a logger.
oh, he's a logger. Oh, my mistake. Because he has like, he just has this. It's a logging truck, not a fire truck, right? That she
Yes,
runs
it's
to.
it's a
And
logging truck
the,
because it's
the,
got the
the
it's
reason
got the
I
logs in the back. Yeah.
the reason I bring it up that I really like about this character is that he is a man in uniform. He is wearing the guise of a trustworthy position. When people are wearing like those types of reflector vests and all the rest, like they are showing themselves to be like helpful members of society who
He's
are there to
supposed
assist.
to be there. He's supposed to
He,
be there for
yep,
some
he's
reason.
supposed to be there, and that's
He's
no
not just
different from
some
what the
dude.
aliens are doing, right? Once
Yeah.
again, like these alien creatures are disguising themselves as like regular people out and about in the world, and then they pounce, they prey on these people, and he does the same.
But yeah, exactly. But again, in a reversal of roles, he finds herself in the position of the prey of an opportunistic predator. He has her alone in the woods. He tries to, she wakes up in the hut to him like fondling her, so she runs off, and he chases her and catches her, and he starts tearing her clothes off, and is going to rape her, but tears her skin, revealing some of what is underneath, and he gets scared and he freaks
Flesh.
out. He freaks out and runs away. And so then we get her sort of like finally like pulling off her skin, just revealing that what is underneath is just basically just a smooth black, looks like Scarlett Johansson but without the structure of Scarlett Johansson but without the skin.
Well, I found that to be like quite unsettling. The shot in particular before she takes everything off, and her skin has been sort of like disfigured, is her head, like the mask that is like her head has come sideways a little bit. So the proportions are just wrong, and like, but the eyes still blink as like it's sort of off kilter and sideways as the ear has been sort of pushed a little bit. And there's this wonderful shot of her from behind where like we see her ear like again looking away from us, but then the head is still positioned a little bit further towards the side, and it's really gross. Like it's really unsettling and uncanny, like like a poorly drawn image in realism. Like it's really fucking freaky.
And then when she pulls the skin off and she's kind of like looking at her human face, the eyes do still blink.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
she's wearing
is
that human like skin suit with
yeah.
automation. Or like maybe that was at some point like someone's very real skin and it was that same kind of leftover material that we saw, like there's who knows? Like maybe the meat isn't what these aliens are after at all. It's like the
Maybe it's the
the suit.
skins. Oh yeah, I don't think they're after the skin because like when we see the dude's skin left over after the meat gets sucked out, it's all like tattered and kind of like torn, and it just sort of like floats away into nothing. They're siphoning away the blood and the meat. That's I think that's what they're after. I don't think they're after the skins. I think they got the skin game on lock. Clearly.
I'm
Um,
yeah. And just like me at a county fair, I'm going after the potato skins.
You want
Um
we want the skins, folks.
oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anyway, to sort of just like bring it back to the very end, like yeah, she pulls off her skin, but the logger comes back with a can of gasoline or petrol, and dumps it all over her and sets her aflame, and
Very quickly. Yeah, there's little to no circumstance about the whole thing. She's just yeah, he does it so fast. Like before you can really
yeah,
register what's going
he
on,
just
she's
runs
already
back, just
on.
like douses her in gasoline, lights a match, and she is just like fully aflame. And she wanders off into a field of snow and collapses and burns up. And then the final shot of the film is sort of panning up to the sky with the smoke as she is being disseminated into the environment, into nature, and we get the shot looking up and like the snowflakes falling down. Again, I feel like it's kind of mirroring like the early stuff with the biker and the lights like flying by. It's that same kind of thing of like these little particles like moving past the camera, like you're flying through space kind of.
So earlier I made a point, a little editor's note. I wanted to circle back after we
About
discussed the
her
final scene. Because
about her
I don't think
genitals.
yeah, that we don't have the full context in that scene. But I think by the end that we do. When she's thrown down in the woods and he grabs her, her skin tears and her darkness is revealed, within her lack of humanity. I think she's worried that had happened. Like because we see her fully nude, like in several scenes. Like as far as I'm from what I saw, and I was looking very closely. Like she struck me as fully equipped in those scenes. I saw it more
I mean,
as
she didn't fucking bust it open. She's
no,
like
no,
some.
Jesus, but like
I mean, we don't like, yeah, from like she's wearing human skin. Like she stands in front of a mirror nude. So it's not, she's not like a Barbie doll down there, but we don't like,
yes,
maybe there's not an opening.
yeah, but
He
what I
seems
saw
to
is
be
she's not.
the guy seems to be struggling to figure out what to do with his peener there.
It
Is all.
is To me, it is a matter of like it's less about the mechanics of that, but more about the fact that she grabs the lamp because she is scared she has been torn.
Okay. I feel like
That's
she's
yeah.
I feel like she's never paid close. I read as she's never sort of like considered what's going on down there because she's never had to. It's never been like a part of her function. So I figure she's just trying to take a closer look. But who knows? Again, like they don't,
Yeah,
you know,
I saw it more as
it
like
could be
For
both.
all we know, maybe
a
he
metaphoric
busted
reflection.
immediately, and that's why
Oh
she's
yeah.
horrified. You
Oh yeah,
know,
And
but
that's why she's
hero.
taking a closer look. Yeah, maybe he just comes immediately.
Yeah, but it's like like sexual empathy is such a large component of this film. I saw it as like literally like she was worried she had been scarred and she was scared and terrified, and it's sort of a reflection of how people can be harmed and the rest.
Well,
Like
that's the thing. We just don't know, and you
that's
can
the
look
beauty
at
of
it
allegory,
various
baby.
different ways.
I mean, again, like the point is the thematic like reversal, right? Like
Right,
uh
right.
sexual seduction being reversed. And like by the end, like it's been fully reversed, right? Because she's fully become prey, and to the point where she is set aflame and killed.
It's her end. It's her undoing.
I I did while we're on the subject of the nudity. I did read that apparently this movie won quote unquote won for what you consider this is the like the best nude scene of the year on MrSkin.com. You know, the website that sort of aggregates nude scenes in movies. And I just think that in like this particular case, it's so funny because like yes,
You
Scarlett
won, Mr.
Johansson
Skin.
one Mr. Skin. I mean, Mr. Skin has been around since like the early 2000s. It's an institution. Not one that I would say that any of us should be proud of, but it does exist. But I think that it's so funny in this case because like yes, technically there is like a pretty prolonged scene of Scarlett Johansson doing full frontal nudity, but with the context of the film and the way that the film treats it, it's entirely unerotic. You know, it's like it's not designed to titillate. I don't think it does titillate. Like it's literally her as an alien consciousness sort of like fully inspecting her human body in the mirror for the first time. And it's not erotic, it's not sensual, like it's you know, it's very objective and you know, even to a degree kind of scientific, you know, and it's just like Mr. Skin is one of those websites where people go to be like, I love X actress. What movies can I beat off to them in?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
crazy that
it's
Mr. Skin was still a thing in 2013, honestly. That feels like a bygone era, even
that'll always be a
in
thing.
2013, right? Because, like, I think Mr. Skin came about because, like, there wasn't an internet as we know it, like, where video is so common and, people had to look up when and where to find material, right?
Brother, I think Mr. Skin is still a thing now. I think in 2025, I'm pretty sure Mr.
That's
Skin is still a thing.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
I think
crazy.
for a lot of people, like they're looking at it because like they know who the person is and they can like more personally like like tether themselves to it, and it's not just you
It's like
know,
maybe the age of deep fakes will like remove the like market for Mr. Skin, but that's not what I would consider a better replacement.
vile.
I
Yeah, no, that's
I
worse.
remember
There's no
Worse,
filter.
arguably.
Yeah.
last time I was back in Iowa, I went to the used bookstore and I found they were selling a book published by Mr. Skin, which was basically a compendium of all the nude scenes of every major
In,
actress and where to
in
find
book
them.
form,
Yeah.
Jesus
I really
Christ,
think
dude.
the worst part about all of it is the
Which is
name. I think it's
honestly
like the
the
most like
biggest
psychotic
reason why
shit.
it feels like a thing of a bygone era to me, right?
What
Because like
You're a
what
mean
kind of a
one, Mr. Skin.
what kind of a gooner freak do you have to be to buy a physical copy of a Mr. Skin book?
to me that's so
Like
boomer coded because it's like
it is.
I want to see naked celebrity, but I don't know how to use the internet. Help me
It's like I
find
mean,
naked celebrity.
if Mr. Skin does still exist, it is exclusively like used by boomers, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
No fucking Zoomer guys are using Mr. Skin to look up videos where Florence Pugh shows her tits or whatever,
Hold on,
like
let me just open up an incognito tab real quick. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's see,
yeah, let's go.
MrSkin.com.
Mr. Skin still exists.
All right, let's see. This is this is very much still a website. Oh wait, I have to. Oh, they wouldn't like me to like verify my image and shit. Never mind, we're not doing that. But it looks like it's still very
You're
much a
not,
thing.
yeah, because you're in Alabama and it's a porn site, so you got to turn on your VPN. Go to
Yeah,
Canada.
ridiculous. All right. Well, anyway, enough of that. I'm not going to do that. That's already pushing it. But
Anywho,
um,
um, I mean, I feel like I could talk about this movie for another 2 hours, but like,
sure.
is there anything else that particularly y'all want to hit, or
No.
y'all
I
ready to
mean
rate?
the obvious biggest thing that we haven't talked about is the music. Like
Oh
holy
yeah,
shit,
music's
the
great.
music is incredible in this thing. And honestly to me, it carries a lot of the dread and emotion of the film because again, like with the visual so objective and detached, like the music really kind of puts emphasis in so many places where I don't know if it would have that otherwise
I feel like
in
the
the same
music
way.
I feel like the score is a little bit ahead of its time for when this movie came out because like when I was especially when we were watching it this time, I was listening to the music, I was like, man, this score sounds like this in a lot of ways. It's like the same kind of like minimalist like spooky string heavy with like sort of off kilter percussion shit that has become like very standard for like the brand of A24
Before.
elevated horror. Like you this is an A24 film. This is an early A24 film worth pointing out. I think it's in their first stable batch, I think. Like they started releasing shit in like 2013, so this was an early one. But like I mean it's the kind of score that like you would hear in The Witch or stuff like that, very similar. So like when I was listening to it this time I was like, man, yeah, this kind of does just like it's good, but it kind of sounds like every elevated horror movie. But it's like no, this movie was like before all of those movies.
Well, I think what differentiates it is like some of the electronics at work in it. Like I think about the scene where the motorcycle guy is disposing of Adam Pearson's body, and there's like this blaring bass, like sub bass that is so heavy that it almost blows out the mix. And it's incredible. You know,
Yeah, it's
it's super effective and really unsettling.
yeah, it is a really great score. And I mean, while we're on the subject of music, we do have to mention that this movie has the perfect ultimate needle drop that any movie can have. I don't think you can consider it really a needle drop because it's diegetic. But when she goes to the club to pick up that guy and
Rude
she's
sandstorm.
dancing, what is she dancing to? Darude Sandstorm. That's right, baby. You know it. She's fucking busting. She's fucking busting it down. She's learning. She's learning to how to dance like a human to in the club to Darude Sandstorm.
Truly
So
the A Lamau dance right there.
yeah, absolutely. No, they really captured the eternal spirit of the club because no matter what era it is, if you go to the club and they're playing Darude Sandstorm, it just makes sense.
Mhm.
Anyway, rate time.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a movie that I can see it not being for everybody. It's very for me though. And especially on rewatch, like I was just really, really impressed by the craft of this movie, the atmosphere, just like the whole package. It's just really exquisite. Jonathan Glazer is an incredible filmmaker, I think. And you can really see a lot of the same DNA that's in this movie in Zone of Interest, even though they're very, very different. This is a 5 out of 5 for me.
Baby. That's 5 stars. Like easy. I mean, what what the fuck else am I gonna rate this movie?
Yeah, this like I said, I knew this. I knew this
Perfect
was a
for me.
Cleve. I knew this was a
Yeah.
Cleve ass movie.
It's quiet, it's paced, it takes its time, it's atmospheric, it's ponderous, and it's most importantly thematic, and it prioritizes themes over details. I loved it. I thought it was I thought it was excellent. Big fan.
Ben, before you give your rating, I will preemptively absolve you. You do not have to feel bad for not making this a golden pod.
Yeah, me padre feeling. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have been blessed.
Well, that's good
rate.
because again, it's something.
Yeah.
This is a movie that I respect a lot. I think it looks incredible. Music's incredible. Scarlett Johansson's performance is really good. But again, like it's a movie that I respect more than I love because like the observational detachment strips back a little too much of the dread and the emotion for me, where I think just a little giving me a little bit more would have gone a long way. It's going to be a strong 4 out of 5 for me. I do think Jonathan Glazer is still an incredible director. But yeah, it's not perfect for me. But I still really enjoy it.
Well, sometimes it's okay to be wrong. But no, I think it's a perfectly respectable score. Frankly, I did not on a first viewing, I didn't think this was perfect either. I really gained some appreciation for it on this most recent viewing, but that will give Under the Skin an average of 4.7 out of 5 stars. So definitely check it out if it sounds interesting. If it sounds boring, then you might indeed think it's boring. So, don't feel too bad. Anywho, next week we're finally going back to the movies, the theatre, after like a month and a half of no noteworthy new movies coming out. We're going to see Sinners, the new Ryan Coogler movie starring his muse Michael B. Jordan
I'm hopeful.
as twins. And one of
I'm
them's a
hopeful.
vampire.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a Southern vampire story. See our episode on Near Dark. I love that shit. So let's see how it goes.
I'm a little skeptical. I'm going in open. I like Ryan Coogler as a director, but I think that he has been rolling around in the Marvel slop trough for a long time now, for a number of years, and I am nervous that he has maybe learned some bad lessons from that. But we will see. I'm going in with tempered expectations, but hoping for the best because I do like Ryan Coogler as a filmmaker. I like Michael B. Jordan as an actor, and yeah, Southern Gothic vampire movie period piece. Like, yeah, what's not to love? So
Yeah, well,
tune in.
it's one of the first movies to be shot in both 65 millimeter and IMAX. I watched a
Did
video on Ryan Coogler talking about it, and he was
he
very
do
passionate about the format. So
did he do the Tommy Wiseau technique where he just mounted two cameras next to each other on, on a plate and shot both formats simultaneously?
that's a great question. If he did, honestly, big dick energy right
Respect,
there.
respect. Paying homage to one of the greats, Tommy Wiseau. So yeah, definitely you don't want to miss our review of Sinners next week, so be sure to join us then. Until then, if you like the show, like and rate us and subscribe and blah blah blah, give us 5 stars on all of the apps or wherever you're listening to this. It really does help us sort of work our way up in the charts and get into more people's feeds and stuff. So if you haven't done it, please do. It takes like 15 seconds. Your review can literally just be I like this show. Like that's all you got to do. But if you want to go the extra mile, certainly don't forget that we have a Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/podpeoplepod, you can subscribe to one of our 3 glorious tiers for various rewards. Shout out to our honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, Micah, and Mitchell. Y'all are the best. And yeah, you can also, of course, follow us on Letterboxd, Pod People Podcast, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. For my recommendation this week, I've finally gotten around to watching the new-ish show on Max, Common Side Effects. It's by one of the co-creators of Scavenger's Reign. It's an animated show. You can very much tell that it's by one of the Scavenger's Reign people, but also executive produced by Mike Judge. So it's definitely got a sense of humor. Similar to Scavenger's Reign, it deals with some of the same kind of surreal existential themes that does, but a little bit more grounded in a kind of like espionage, like spy thriller type of thing. But Mike Judge plays like fully 1/3 of the side characters, and also plays like the main character he plays is like, what if Hank Hill was like a sort of feckless pharmaceutical CEO who's addicted to playing phone games. It's great. I have not seen the entire first season yet. I'm about halfway through, but I've really been enjoying it. That's
I
a
watched
common side
the
effect.
premiere earlier this week, and I was really impressed. I'm excited to watch
Yeah,
more of it. It's been really good.
it's a good show. Like you know, it's not it kind of presents itself as like a kind of you know, adult animation comedy show, but I definitely say like it's more of a dramedy. Like it takes itself pretty seriously, and like the story is like pretty dramatic, but it definitely has a good sense of humor. And the animation is something I would describe as a cross between like, I don't know, like obviously Scavenger's Reign, but like maybe fucking like Squidbillies. Like
Hell
it's
yeah. Dude, what a wacky thing to say. I'm even more sold.
it's no, it's a no, Cleve. You will, particularly for you, you will
Sure.
very much enjoy
Yeah, you were
it.
talking about Cleve Core. Scavenger's Reign might be one of the most. God, I fucking
Yeah,
love it.
this is not quite at that Cleve core, but as a fan of Scavenger's Reign, you should definitely check out Common Side
I just
Effects.
love quality animation, and it's getting hard to find. So
Yeah,
I see. All right, Ben, what's yours?
and
You know what? I'll shout out Sexy Beast, Jonathan Glazer's
hmm,
first movie. Uh, Incredible film starring Ray Winstone and Ben Kingsley. You know, British crime thriller. It's very funny. It's very vibrant. It's very different than this movie too. There's a lot more plot to it and a lot more dialogue. But Glazer pulls it off.
My recommendation is going to be very on theme. It is also a story about being trapped in a surreal space by a predatory lover. And that is the Bela Bartok production of Duke Bluebeard's Castle. I watched that earlier this week, and it was so fucking sick. I gotta say, if you're a fan of like FromSoft aesthetics, it's that in like 80s opera form. The opera is of course much older than that, but this production in particular was shot in Roughly that time. It might have been the 90s. I'm not 100% sure. But it's about an ancient castle and this woman who's exploring it for the first time. And it's her betrothed castle. And all of the horrors within. It's sick. It's an opera, so they're singing the whole time, but like it's the lyrics are to me very metal, and I think it's just dripping with just really really sick evil atmosphere. It's probably going to be a pick of mine at some point. Likely
Wow,
very soon.
you're gonna do our first opera on the podcast.
Remember the Paradise? We did that. I think that was one of Ben's picks, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's a move. That's a rock opera. That's not quite the
Yeah,
same
this
thing.
is just like straight up like an opera, but like the sets are so cool. The cinematography is amazing. It's a movie, and it's like an hour long, and you can just watch it on YouTube. So I do strongly recommend it. But yeah, I'm thinking because it's an hour, I might want to pair it with something. I haven't decided yet. I'm gonna try and do something smart. But
Is it horror?
yeah,
Okay.
easy yes. Like aesthetically yes, and then yeah, like Bluebeard is like a murderer. He killed all his wives, and it's like they're like haunting the castle and shit. Like yeah, dude.
These days, people be worried about blue hair wokies, but they should be worried about blue beard chokies.
They should be worried about Bluebeard chokies.
Yeah. All right, cool.
I'm worried about it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to the podcast, everybody. And until next time, never forget that beauty is only skin deep, baby. It's that meat underneath that matters.
Under the skin.
Under the skin.